Hip-hop fans thought the tension between 50 Cent and Max B was already heating up, but nobody expected things to explode this fast. The moment the diss track started circulating online, the internet went into a frenzy. Fans began dissecting every single bar, trying to figure out exactly who is being targeted and how far this situation might go. But the real shock came when two major voices from New York's rap scene stepped in: Jim Jones and Maino. And according to people close to the situation, their reaction was anything but quiet. Sources say the moment the diss track reached them, both rappers had strong opinions about what was said. The lyrics were sharp, the tone was aggressive, and some lines appeared to throw direct shots that fans immediately picked up on. Within hours, social media was buzzing with speculation about whether this was just lyrical competition or the beginning of something much bigger. What made things even more intense was the message that followed. Instead of ignoring the situation, Jim Jones and Maino reportedly addressed it head-on, making it clear they weren't about to stay silent. According to insiders, their response carried a clear warning, one that instantly grabbed the attention of fans and industry figures alike. Now the hip-hop world is watching closely. Is this just another rap rivalry heating up, or is it the start of a new chapter in one of the most talked-about feuds in the culture? Because if the reactions from Jim Jones and Maino are any indication, this situation might be far from over. The tension surrounding the diss track didn't calm down after the first reactions hit the internet. If anything, it only grew louder. Hip-hop fans everywhere were replaying the track again and again, breaking down every lyric and every hidden message. At the center of the storm were two names everyone in the culture recognizes: Jim Jones and Maino. Both rappers had long histories in the New York rap scene, and when something serious happens in hip-hop, their voices carry weight. So when word spread that they had finally heard the diss track involving 50 Cent and Max B, fans immediately started waiting for their reaction. And it didn't take long. According to people close to the situation, the first reaction came during a private conversation that quickly turned heated. The moment the lyrics were played, the room reportedly went silent. Jim Jones leaned back in his chair, listening carefully as the track continued. His expression stayed calm, but the people around him could tell he was analyzing every line. Anyone who has followed his career knows he doesn't react impulsively. He listens first, then speaks when he's ready. When the song finally ended, someone in the room asked the question everyone was thinking. "So, what do you think?" For a few seconds, Jim Jones didn't answer. Instead, he looked around the room slowly, almost like he was measuring the energy before speaking. Then he gave a small nod. "Yeah, I heard what he said," he replied quietly. Those simple words instantly told everyone something important. He had definitely caught the message behind the lyrics. But the real reaction came moments later when Maino joined the conversation. Maino had just arrived and hadn't heard the track yet. As soon as someone explained what was going on, he asked them to play it immediately. The room fell quiet again as the beat started playing. This time, all eyes were on him. Maino listened carefully, his face serious as the diss bars rolled through the speakers. Every few seconds, he shook his head slightly, almost like he couldn't believe some of the lines being said. By the time the track finished, the mood in the room had changed completely. Maino leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "That's what we're doing now," he said. The tone in his voice wasn't loud, but it was sharp. And the people around him instantly realized this situation might become bigger than anyone expected. Because when experienced rappers like Jim Jones and Maino react like that, it usually means something serious is happening behind the scenes. For years, hip-hop fans have watched the complicated history between 50 Cent and Max B unfold. The tension between their camps has been discussed countless times online, with fans debating everything from old interviews to past collaborations. But this diss track seemed to bring those old issues back into the spotlight again. Jim Jones crossed his arms and looked toward Maino. "You heard that line, right?" he asked. Maino nodded slowly. "Oh, I heard it," he replied. The two rappers exchanged a glance that said more than words. It was the kind of look that happens when two people instantly understand the deeper meaning behind something. And that's when the conversation became more serious. One of the people in the room asked if they thought the diss track was meant to provoke a response. Jim Jones shrugged slightly. In this game, he said, everything's meant to get a reaction. Maino agreed immediately. That's how it works, he added. Some people throw a line out there just to see who bites. But then he paused. And sometimes, they forget who they're talking about. That statement caused a few people in the room to exchange looks. Because while the conversation was still calm, the message behind their words was becoming clearer. Neither of them seemed impressed by the diss track. And more importantly, they didn't seem intimidated either. As the discussion continued, more people began sharing their opinions about the track. Some thought it was clever. Others believed it crossed certain lines that could lead to a bigger conflict. But Jim Jones kept listening quietly. Finally, he spoke again. You gotta understand something about this industry, he said. Everybody wants attention. But attention comes with consequences. Those words hung in the air for a moment. Maino nodded slowly. That's the part people forget, he said. When you say certain things, you gotta be ready for what comes back. By this point, the conversation had clearly shifted from simple commentary to something more serious. Fans online were already debating the diss track heavily, but inside that room the discussion felt different. It felt personal. Someone asked Jim Jones directly if he planned to respond publicly. He leaned back again, thinking for a moment before answering. You don't always respond right away, he said. Sometimes the best move is letting people talk first. Maino smirked slightly at that comment. Yeah, he said. But sometimes you gotta remind people who they're dealing with. That comment instantly raised eyebrows around the room. Because even though neither rapper had directly threatened anyone, the tone of the conversation was becoming more intense. It was clear that they had taken notice of the diss track, and they weren't ignoring it. At the same time, the internet was already starting to explode with reactions. Fans were posting clips of the track, arguing in comment sections, and predicting whether another diss record might be coming soon. Some believed 50 Cent was simply stirring up controversy again, something he has famously done many times throughout his career. Others believed the situation could escalate into a full rap battle if the wrong response was given. Back in the room, Jim Jones checked his phone for a moment. His social media notifications were already flooding in. People were tagging him in posts about the diss track, asking for his opinion and waiting for a reaction. He looked at the screen for a second, then locked the phone again. They watching, he said quietly. Maino laughed slightly. They always watching, he replied. But then his expression turned serious again. And now they waiting too. The truth was obvious. Everyone wanted to know if Jim Jones and Maino would respond, and if they did, how strong that response would be. Because in hip-hop, moments like this often become defining chapters in rap history. A single diss track can turn into a full rivalry overnight. And when respected voices from the culture start reacting publicly, the pressure grows even bigger. Jim Jones looked around the room one more time. This whole situation, he said slowly, it's about to get interesting. Maino nodded again. Oh yeah, he replied. But if people think we're not paying attention, they got the wrong idea. The people in the room immediately understood what that meant. The diss track had been heard. The message had been received. And now, the hip-hop world was about to find out what happens next. Because judging by the way Jim Jones and Maino reacted in that moment, they were already preparing for whatever move came next. And if the tension kept building the way it was, the next response could shake the entire rap scene. After the initial shock of hearing the diss track, the room seemed to hang in suspended tension. The silence wasn't empty, it was heavy, like everyone was waiting for the next move. Fans online had already erupted with reactions, but inside that room, the real players were deciding their next steps carefully. Jim Jones, leaning back in his chair, ran a hand over his face. He didn't rush to speak. In the world of hip-hop, every word counts, and he knew that a rushed response could escalate the situation in ways nobody wanted. Maino, standing nearby, was more visibly charged. His jaw was tight, his eyes scanning the room, and every now and then he muttered under his breath, analyzing the lyrics, breaking them down line by line. Did he really just say that? Maino finally spoke, a mix of disbelief and irritation in his voice. That line is reckless. Jim Jones looked at him with a calm, yet intense stare. Reckless? Maybe, but it's calculated too. That's how they play this game. Always trying to see who bites. A low murmur spread among the people in the room. Everyone could sense the weight of the words being exchanged. The diss track wasn't just music, it was a challenge, a provocation, and now Jim Jones and Maino were dissecting it like strategists on a battlefield. Maino shook his head. I don't like the disrespect, though. That's crossing a line. You throw shots like that, you better be ready for the fallout. The room seemed to tense again at his words. Fallout wasn't just a word in their vocabulary, it was a warning. In hip-hop culture, a reaction could snowball fast. What started as a diss track could escalate into an all-out lyrical war, or worse, a real-world confrontation. Jim Jones leaned forward slightly. Look, I've seen it happen too many times. People think it's just bars on a track. But it's never just bars. It's a statement. And that statement demands attention. Someone in the room, an insider who had been observing quietly, finally spoke up. So, you're saying you're going to respond? Jones paused, his gaze steady. Maybe, but it's not about responding immediately. It's about responding smart. Timing is everything. And trust me, when the response drops, everybody will know we weren't sitting quiet. Maino nodded, rubbing his hands together. Exactly. People think silence is weakness. It's not. It's strategy. But when the time comes, you can't hesitate. The tension shifted slightly, from shock to calculation. The energy in the room was electric, like the calm before a storm. Every eye was on Jim Jones and Maino, every ear straining to catch what might come next. The diss track, looping again on a phone speaker, didn't lose its effect. Each line seemed sharper than the last, and with each repetition, the heat in the room intensified. Maino's eyes narrowed as a particular verse played. That right there, he muttered, pointing at the phone, that's a direct shot. Ain't nobody supposed to disrespect like this without consequences. Jim Jones let out a low laugh, almost dry, almost warning. Consequences. Yeah, that's the thing about this business. People always forget that actions have reactions. At that moment, a social media alert went off on Jones' phone. Fans and followers had already begun posting clips of the track, tagging both him and Maino, asking for their opinions. The notifications were relentless, hundreds of messages flooding in at once. Jones scrolled briefly, then locked his phone. They're watching, he said quietly. Always watching. Maino leaned closer, smirking. And now they're waiting too. The energy in the room shifted again, heavier this time. Because everyone realized what that meant. This wasn't just about the track itself, it was about the culture, the respect, the legacy. A response, whether verbal, lyrical, or visual, could shift the narrative for weeks, months, even years. Then Jim Jones leaned forward, voice low but firm. Listen, the problem with this track, it's not just disrespect. It's about perception. If we don't handle this correctly, people will think we're weak. And we're not weak. Maino nodded. People need to understand, you can't play games with reputation. Reputation is everything. One track, one verse, it can shift the entire conversation in the streets and online. As they spoke, the room seemed to shrink. Every word was measured, every glance calculated. These weren't casual comments, they were strategies in real time. The diss track had lit a spark, and now the two veterans were carefully deciding whether to fan the flames or let it burn out naturally. Then Maino stood up, pacing slightly. Yo, this is bigger than us though. 50 Cent and Max B, they know the streets are watching. They know fans are analyzing every bar. They want a reaction. And if we don't give it, they'll spin it however they want. Jones nodded, his gaze intense. Exactly. But we control the reaction. That's power. We choose the time, the place, and the message. And when it comes, it's gonna hit harder than anyone expects. At this point, the people in the room understood the unspoken rules. A diss track might be entertainment for some, but for those directly involved, it was serious business. Strategy mattered more than emotion. Timing mattered more than impulse. And the consequences? They could echo across the entire industry. Maino shook his head, almost in disbelief. People don't get it. This isn't just bars. This is respect, credibility, everything you've built over years. And some people throw it all away thinking it's a joke. Jones smirked slightly. A joke? Yeah, until the response comes. The tension in the room built again, thicker this time. Every person present seemed to feel the weight of the situation. Even without raising their voices, the energy told a story of power, strategy, and potential chaos. Then a quiet voice from the corner asked, "So, when will they hear from you?" Maino looked at Jones, then back at the group. "Soon. But it's got to be the right moment. You don't react to bait. You set the stage and make sure your response lands perfectly." Jim Jones nodded slowly. "Exactly. You let them underestimate you, and that's a mistake. But you strike too early, and it loses impact. Timing is everything." The room fell silent for a moment. Everyone knew this wasn't just talk. The diss track had started something, but the real story was just beginning. Over the next hour, the discussion continued, delving into potential strategies, public perception, and the best way to reclaim control over the narrative. Every line from the diss track was analyzed. Every potential reaction weighed. And by the time the meeting ended, the mood was clear. Jim Jones and Maino were not intimidated, but they were ready to strike if needed. As everyone left the room, the unspoken message lingered. The streets, the fans, and the culture would soon see the response. And when it came, it wouldn't just be a reaction, it would be a statement. Because in hip-hop, respect isn't optional. And if you cross the line, don't be surprised when the veterans step up. The diss track had set the stage, but Jim Jones and Maino were about to write the next chapter. And if fans thought this was the climax, they were dead wrong. The war was far from over. And the streets were waiting. The tension that had been building for days finally reached its boiling point. The diss track had set the streets on fire. Fans were dissecting every single line, and now Jim Jones and Maino were ready to make their move. But this wasn't just about a lyrical feud anymore. It had become a test of respect, reputation, and influence. The first whispers of their planned response had already begun circulating on social media. Fans tagged them in posts, begged for statements, and speculated on what would happen next. The pressure was mounting, and every move was being watched. In hip-hop, timing is everything. Strike too early, and it looks reactive. Strike too late, and it looks weak. Inside a private studio in New York, Jones and Maino gathered with their closest team members. The atmosphere was electric. Every beat, every lyric, every word was being scrutinized. The diss track from 50 Cent and Max B had been clever, aggressive, and direct. But Jones and Maino weren't intimidated, they were calculating. "You see what they're doing?" Maino said, pacing back and forth. "They're trying to make this personal. They want the streets watching. They want fans picking sides. But we're not just gonna let them control the narrative." Jim Jones nodded, eyes narrowed. "Exactly. They think this is just entertainment. But it's bigger than that. This is respect. And if you throw shots like that, there's a price to pay." For a moment, the room was silent. Everyone knew the gravity of what was about to unfold. The diss track had already reached millions online. Every reaction would be scrutinized, debated, and amplified across social media. A wrong move could escalate into something dangerous. A sharp move could set the streets ablaze. Then Maino spoke again, voice low but deliberate. "We don't respond just to respond. We respond to make a statement. And when we drop this, people are gonna remember it." Jones leaned back, a smirk forming. "Yeah, they'll know we weren't sitting back, taking it. They'll know who they're dealing with." Hours later, as the studio session continued, the team meticulously mapped out every line. Every bar had purpose. Every beat had intention. The goal wasn't just to fire back at 50 Cent and Max B, it was to send a warning. To show that disrespect in hip-hop has consequences and that the veterans weren't playing games. Social media rumors began swirling again. Clips leaked, fans speculated about the recording session, and snippets of their reactions spread online. The streets were buzzing. Everyone knew something big was coming. Finally, the track was ready. Jones hit play, and the room fell silent. The bars were sharp, deliberate, and pointed. Every line delivered a clear message. The diss had been heard. the challenge acknowledged, and a warning had been sent. Maino's voice cut through the beat. They thought we were quiet. They thought we wouldn't respond. But now, they know. You can't disrespect legends and get away with it. Jones nodded, his expression serious. This isn't just about us. It's about the culture. You throw shots, you gotta be ready for what comes back. And this? This is just the beginning. Word of their response quickly leaked to the public. Fans on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok immediately began sharing the news. Speculation reached fever pitch. Would 50 Cent respond? Would Max be fire back? Or would this mark a turning point in the ongoing feud? The anticipation was palpable. Everyone wanted to see what would happen next. And in true hip-hop fashion, the tension was part of the spectacle. Every lyric, every word, every pause became a headline. Then came the first public reaction from 50 Cent. In a series of posts online, he acknowledged the diss, praising some lines while hinting at a stronger response yet to come. Fans immediately went wild, debating who had the upper hand and predicting the next moves in this unfolding saga. Meanwhile, Jim Jones and Maino stayed calm, refusing to escalate publicly further. Their strategy was clear: respond smartly, dominate lyrically, and let the work speak for itself. The message had been sent: disrespect comes with consequences, and they were in full control of the narrative. As the night progressed, more analysts, influencers, and fans weighed in. Clips from interviews, studio sessions, and behind-the-scenes snippets flooded the internet. Every angle of the feud was being dissected. And, through it all, one thing was clear: the diss track war had become more than just music. It had become a cultural event, watched, debated, and analyzed by millions. By the end of the night, the streets, the fans, and the culture had received a clear message. Jim Jones and Maino had not only reacted, they had dominated the narrative. The diss track challenge had been acknowledged, respected, and countered. And most importantly, a warning had been sent. In hip-hop, respect is earned, and crossing the line has consequences. But as with every major feud in hip-hop, this wasn't the end. It was a chapter. The diss track had ignited sparks, and the response had added fuel. The streets would watch, the fans would debate, and the next move was always looming. In the world of rap, a battle doesn't end when the track drops. It ends when the culture decides who has the power. And with Jim Jones and Maino stepping up, one thing was certain: nobody would forget this showdown anytime soon. The diss track war had entered its next phase, and the eyes of the hip-hop world were watching every move. Because in this game, respect isn't optional. And legends don't stay quiet. The stage was set. The players were ready. And the culture was about to witness one of the most intense rap confrontations of the year.